Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Belly to Belly. And today we're here to talk about U.S. expansion with a great friend, Taha Memon from the Founders Club International. Welcome, Taha.
Nice to be here, Bill. Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
it's great to have you. And so, as we get into this conversation, our audience are all companies who are either have already expanded into the U.S. or are coming and are really looking for, kind of the best advice and ways to grow effectively and quickly in the U.S. Um, Before we get started, it'd be really nice if you wouldn't mind just spend a minute and talk about what Founders Club International does to help international companies expanding into the US.
Sure. So, the real formation of this company was really to help scale up Series A and up companies and investors that are looking to grow into North America and other markets. Specifically, I'll focus on North America for this podcast, but really it is to support them, to help them with their market entry, to support them with stakeholder management, support them in their government relations, and also advise them as to who and where and when they should partner up with someone locally in the US to grow their operations, or you know, have 100% full ownership of the company, but where to really spend their time, you know, growing their market. So really, it's supporting them from their market entry onwards into their growth stage. We have companies that come to us from all over Europe and the GCC primarily that are looking at the US as a base, especially with the public policy and geopolitical situation in the world. People want to have a base in the United States, so that they can have, they can tap into North American operations, but also, from the US, they look at other markets to get clients from as well.
Super. No, this is fantastic, and I loved as I was perusing your website, seeing all the events that you run and all that. It really looks like you built a heck of a community. So, you know, thinking about companies expanding to the U.S. and I ask this question because the failure rate of companies expanding is often fairly high. And when you see kind of where companies fail in their U.S. expansion, what are some of the areas that you see kind of to be the biggest challenges for companies as they're coming in?
I think really when companies are looking to the US as a base, what they're usually, the first question that comes in is really the location, right? What state, what county will be the best location for them to set up their base and start their operations? And that's really, and usually it's a few different states that they're looking at, and our job really is to see which county is going to give them the best benefits to set up their operations. What site location is the best location for their operations to start off. So that's really the first initial, I would say, bottleneck that they kind of are stuck in. And that's really the initial phase of the conversation as to where their customer acquisition cost will be low as possible based on the location they choose within the United States. So that's really, I would say, one of the biggest problems that they have to figure out before scaling, or coming up with a strategic plan. Because once you have the location of where they will operate from, then only can you come up with a strategy um, for their long-term growth. So I would say to start off, that is one problem. Second is the level of effort which is required. Identifying the right level of effort to succeed in North America is also, I would say, sometimes a bottleneck, because most of the times, the founder or the company owner will maybe underestimate the level of effort. The US is highly competitive, so you have to make sure that from a perspective of level of effort required to succeed in the US, they've identified that and they've come to the reality of the on-ground situation of what it takes for a company to scale into new markets.
So I think the site selection is probably fairly easy for people to understand. Obviously, trying to figure out you know, where you're able to access the most customers, or if you're manufacturing, maybe your supply chain, but kind of going through those various elements. In terms of level of effort, can we unpack that just a little bit? Can you kind of walk through what might be some of the considerations with level of effort?
I think really what it comes down to is if it's small to medium-sized enterprise, to do well in the US, you have to localize your team at some point.
Mhm.
You have to hire people from the US to have them so that they're culturally acclimated to the location, their clients. So sometimes small to medium size, they obviously try to keep their core team as to where they maybe initially started from.
Mhm.
Um, and and sometimes, when you're growing into a new market, you want to stick with the same team to scale into a new market. So usually that level of effort that's defined, sometimes it can be um, it's usually off because they're used to small to medium sized operations. And when you go into a new market, then you have to change how your brain operates. And not every founder can do that. So it requires them to function at a different optimum level, or maybe them to think beyond their initial market. And that's really and at the core, when you're starting off in a new place, giving your proprietary data and information to a completely new person that's joining in as a maybe as a potential director or partner in the company is not an easy thing to do for small to medium size when they are in the growth stage. um, so I think that's really the space where they struggle in, but you have to walk them through the benefits of localizing their operations, because then only can they tap into the US market. If their clients are getting calls from some other part of the world and they're not culturally acclimated with how business is done in the US, then it usually doesn't work in their favor long term.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I was even thinking of something different, and maybe I am sort of misinterpreting where you were going, but I guess I was thinking that level of effort would have something to do with, the potentially that, obviously you're wherever you're expanding to, you're taking on more responsibility. And so coming to the US quite often, I hear the recommendation, and we often give it, that founder-led sales is an important attribute of US expansion. And so not only does that require something of a founder who's now going to be probably either now living or spending a lot of time in a new marketplace, and obviously putting demands on their family, putting demands on team members who are filling their role back at the home office, whatever the case may be. And so I was sort of thinking of that as
Yeah,
potentially level
I
of
think
effort.
you're
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a client out of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that's that was moving actually to Seattle. They're in the healthcare space,
They
and
couldn't find anywhere further away to move in the US than Seattle.
yeah, so they came up with Seattle, and we said, okay, Seattle is and I won't go into why they specifically chose Seattle, but it was just giving them the right benefits as to their what they were trying to do with their company. And at first, maybe the level of effort defined for the founder was to travel maybe once or twice a year. But that was not the case. We had recommended at least spending the first 6 months in the United States so they can spend time, get to build the company, and founder-led sales and the founder being present is extremely important in building relationships. No one else can do it like the founder can. It really has to come down to that, especially when you're in a growth stage. So when it's building blocks, they have to uh, I think the way to succeed for a founder is if they have operations which are super ongoing and they've really plugged themselves out of the operations where they're already kind of um, where the company's running. And what happens is sometimes founders want to go into a new market even though they're in every aspect of the operations in the country that they're coming from. And when they leave for the US, their company struggles back home. So 100%, there's a lot of, it has to be the right timing. And what we recommend is if you're looking at international expansion into the US, then please, unplug yourself from the daily activity, so that you have the time and energy to actually go ahead and expand into a new market. And eventually what they realized was the founders still needed to be in Saudi Arabia to run the operations. They did not have a successor over there to run the operations at that level. So then we had to actually rewire the strategy and find them a local partner who can then scale their business. And that's what they had to come to terms with. Otherwise, both the locations were struggling. So we went the joint venture route,
Yeah.
which was more successful for them.
Yeah, we actually have a client that went to zero at their home in their home market. They were larger in the US in 1 year. And the second year they went to zero in their home market because there was no one to take the baton from the founder. It was just really tragic. He actually basically closed their US operation, went back, rebuilt the home business, got that going again, built a succession team. But I would, I wonder too, and it's floats this idea by you, is, as you're doing that, so as a company's preparing, I wonder if, not just sort of day one in the US be separate, separating that founder out, but even 3 and 6 months before the US launch, getting them out of the day to day or half out and then sort of, a quarter, half, and then 3/4 of the way out of the day to day operation so that it's not this sort of, um, test when it's way too late to make any adjustments. Especially for a smaller team. It just seems like it's so high risk otherwise.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And hence when we take these clients, we're very honest with how we operate in like what could happen and what are some things we see, and we give them the right advice. At the end of the day, it is up to the founder to make that decision. But our goal is to give them the strategy and make sure that we're guiding them in the best way possible.
Right.
And sometimes what you'll notice that maybe they're in a location where they just don't want to exist in that market. They're looking at the next 5 years and they say, hey, listen, we're willing to take the opportunity cost is higher for us. So we're willing
Right.
to take a little bit of a hit in our local operations to set up the base. And if they're aware of that risk, and they've analyzed it with us, then we go ahead with it.
Well, Taha, thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been wonderful. Do you mind if I share your contact details in the description below?
Sure, absolutely. I'm available on email and on LinkedIn at any time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. This has been a real pleasure and really appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for all the great work you're doing.